Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for coming today, and I'm grateful to be here with all of you. And today I will speak on this topic of matters that matter more than matter. Matters that matter more than matter. Learning to put things first in our life. So I'll be writing and drawing certain things. Is this whiteboard also visible to everyone? Or blackboard actually. So I'll basically talk about 3 main points in today's class, and we'll go over these points one by one, and then I'll summarize. So first point I'll talk about the concept of value and desire. That in our lives we value certain things and we desire certain things. So we'll talk about that concept. Then we will talk about distortion of values and distortion of desires. And then last part I'll talk about is the alignment, the transformation or the alignment or the harmonization of these 3 things. So basically, put in another way, the first part will be the concept of how our inner world works. Then I'll talk about impurity, and then I'll talk about the transformation. So this is broadly transformation. This is acronym CIT, CHIT. How we can become more conscious in our life about what we are doing and why we are doing it. So let's begin. Broadly, there are 2 kinds of people in the world. Some people are wise and some people are otherwise. So now it's not just that there are 2 kinds of people in the world. Sometimes it feels as if these 2 kinds of people are living inside us itself. Especially say when we have to advise someone, we feel as if, hey, the pearls of wisdom that are coming from my mouth, somebody should record this, maybe I should write a book. And then when we are provoked, when we are triggered, we speak and do something, such things, we wonder, was that me? I couldn't have done something like that. We can't even recognize ourselves or acknowledge that I did that. So why does this happen? That's what let's explore in the first part. So I'm looking at the concept. So basically, in the Gita explains that our existence is 3 level. We are at our core souls, then there is our body, and then there is the outer world. So now inside us, the link between the body and the soul broadly happens through 2 things. There is the mind and there is the intelligence. Now the mind is associated with desires. Various desires come in our mind. And the intelligence is associated with values. That means the intelligence evaluates, checks the value of something. So for example, if we go to a shopping mall and we see some gadget, maybe some phone, it looks super attractive. And then we get a desire, I should buy it. But then we look at the value, the cost of it. The cost is prohibitive. So is it really worth it? Maybe it's not. So basically there are desires and values. Now the ideal situation for us is that in our inner world, if our desires let's put it here. Sorry. If our desires are healthy, I'll put them on the positive axis, and our desires can be unhealthy. That's on the negative side of the axis. Healthy or unhealthy. And now the word values has a particular meaning, what the values you grow up with, and that's related. But what I am talking about here is something similar, but what I am talking about is what are the things that are important for us. Desires and values. The values can be healthy or the values can be unhealthy. So for example, we may desire something and if somebody doesn't help us, we may get angry with that person. Now if we get angry with that person, at that time we want to yell at that person. Or we may want to use some swear words, some obscene words. Now that desire might come up inside us, but if the values we have learned is that this is not the kind of speech to do, then we won't do that. Now if you consider these 4 quadrants, which is the best quadrant? 4th one, isn't it? Our desires are healthy and our values are also healthy. This is the best quadrant to be in. That means what we desire is good and we also value that thing. So, as I said, desires are associated with the mind and values, they go deeper than the intelligence. But right now, it's our intelligence we can rationally evaluate. See, when some values become deeply ingrained, we may not even have to rationally evaluate. It just becomes a part of our conscience. This cannot be done. But right now, let's focus on the intelligence. So, which is the worst situation? Second quadrant, yes. So, for example, somebody desires that, whatever I want, I can rob it. And the values are, robbing is not the problem. Getting caught after robbing is the problem. If you can rob and not get caught, then it's no problem at all. Actually, that not only is not a problem, that's a sign of your cleverness. How clever you are that you can fool others and get away with whatever you wanted to do. Now, if you consider quadrants 1 and 3, desires are healthy but the values are unhealthy. This is relatively rare because it's easier to change our values, it's easier to go up with values and then to have the desires. But for majority of people, we may have healthy values, but often our desires are unhealthy. Say for example, if you are studying in college, now you understand that if I come to college, the purpose is to study. Now yes, I also want to have some fun. But if the desires are unhealthy, then having fun, going for partying, drinking, getting into all kinds of relationship drama and trauma, all that, those desires may become so strong that although I understand, my parents have invested money, they have expectation from me, I'm supposed to get a good education, the values are there, but the desires may be so unhealthy that we may just be pulled in another direction. And then we may not perform at all in our studies. And then there could be a lot of problems in the future for us. So broadly speaking, for us to grow to our full potential, generally we have to make both our desires healthy and our values healthy. So the concept is that we are driven by desires and we are also driven by values. What we value, we'll do that. And what we desire, also we'll do that. So sometimes these two can pull in opposite directions, sometimes both can pull in the same direction. Now here, if we consider I am here, my values are pulling me in one direction like a student, the values are saying study, the desires are saying enjoy. And then that is a inner tension. Now there are some students who have no inner tension. Maybe they are born very wealthy families and they have a business that they are going to inherit, and whether they do well or studies or not, it doesn't matter. So here there is tension, but sometimes they don't have any tension because desires and values are in the same direction. But this is a dark situation to be in. This is like they are without any tension going to hell. Going to hell, they are creating terrible circumstances for themselves. Somebody just wants to drink a lot. Now every time you drink, apart from the health consequences, apart from the addictive consequences, there is money that is being spent. But if somebody has abundant money, then what happens is it just doesn't matter for them. So they may keep doing that. So this is a dark pathway. Now what we want is that both desires and values get aligned in a health. This is the bright pathway. This is where we would like to be in our lives. So this is the concept of, this is a broad concept. Inside us there is the buddhi and the mana, and because of this we are pulled in different directions at different times. So for example, if somebody has hurt us or annoyed us, we want to yell at that person. There's a desire coming from the mind. But then the values will say, I want to preserve the relationship with this person. I don't want to ruin that relationship. Better restrain yourself. Better don't speak right now. Or at least speak when you are calmer and you can speak more easily. So for us, this tension is going on inside us. This is broadly the concept. Now let's look at the second part I was talking about, is impurity. Now here there are three words we'll discuss. There is a concept of artha. Artha का अर्थ क्या है? अर्थ का अर्थ के अनेक अर्थ है. अर्थ can mean value, अर्थ can mean meaning, अर्थ can mean wealth. भारत के अर्थ मंत्री कौन है? So artha, let's right now focus on it. That's something of value. So now there can be many levels of artha, and wherever this ends. So for example, health is important. After we have health, then we want some education, then we want some respect, then we want some fulfillment. There are different psychologists who talk about different hierarchies of artha. Maslow's hierarchy is there, like that. But the broad point is, there are many arthas in life. But however, there is a Paramartha. Paramartha is the supreme value. And what the Gita says is, this Paramartha is Krishna. Vasudeva Sarvamiti. That there are many things of value in life and those things will give us satisfaction. But it is our connection with Krishna, it is our absorption in Krishna that will give us the supreme satisfaction. That will give us the enduring satisfaction. So various things, their value is not to be rejected. But they are in a hierarchy. Like say, making friends is an important thing in college. They've got to make friends. But in the name of making friends, we start drinking. Because, this person drinks and the only way I can make friends is I have to go and drink with him. Then, okay, friendship is important. But is it that important that I have to become an alcoholic for that person? No. So what happens is, there are many arthas in life, but when any artha, we make it into a paramartha. So for example, if friendship becomes the supreme value, and the friend is alcoholic, and we say, whatever happens, I want to preserve this friendship. When an artha becomes a paramartha, then that leads to anartha. So now, anartha is what? Anartha is any value elevated to the level of the supreme value. So for example, let's consider money. Money is artha. Everybody needs money for living. But when money becomes the paramartha, then what will happen? It will lead to lobha. Lobha is greed. So wealth is important, but when wealth becomes the only value for a person, the supreme value for a person, then that person will become that because this becomes disproportionate, that becomes greed, and that can be destructive, and it can destroy relationships, it can destroy friendship. A person who is greedy may actually rise to the top in the food chain, in the financial ladder, but that person may get a huge house. That huge house will only provide them a lot of space in which to be lonely and unhappy. Because in going up, they just alienated, betrayed everyone else. So, artha is important, but when artha becomes a paramartha. For example, we all want respect in life. No, nobody likes to be disrespected. Respect is also artha. But then respect becomes a paramartha that leads to ahankar, that leads to ego. So, I want to be respected, but when that becomes the only consideration, when I greeted you, didn't greet me back. Now I'll teach you a lesson. So people who have a lot of ego, even small slights, small forms of, which might be incidental disrespect, they will just go wild with it. They'll just not be able to tolerate it. Similarly, if we consider the male-female attraction. Now, that is a natural principle of not just human existence, it is biological life. That is natural. That it is by the male-female attraction that reproduction occurs. It is by male-female attraction that pair bonding occurs. So that's natural. But when this male-female attraction becomes the paramartha, that leads to lust. When this becomes the only thing that matters, then the boundaries of dharma are not cared for, and it can be destructive not just from a spiritual perspective, but even from a social perspective. Many marriages break apart because there are affairs, and then when those marriages break apart, the children are traumatized, and it can lead to a variety of problems. So now we all want control in our life. Nobody likes to feel as if they don't have control in their life. Control is important. But when control becomes the paramartha, that leads to krodha, anger. So, you didn't do exactly what I wanted you to do, I'll destroy you. So, the artha, so all the anarthas come not because of, it's not that they are alien things which suddenly come into us life. It is that which is of some value, we make it the supreme value. And that's where it leads to problems. So impurity essentially means that which is of a lesser value, we make it of a higher value. Purity means that, okay, let me link the two concepts, and then I will illustrate some of these with some incidents from the Mahabharata. So, in our growth, so basically, before I go to purity or impurity, let's look at this whole concept of anartha first. But I started by talking about desires and values. So, now when I say an artha becomes a paramartha, something of lesser value becomes of the supreme value. Now how does it happen? It can happen at the level of the mind, or it can happen at the level of the intelligence. What do I mean by this? That at the level of the mind, so let's look at it this way. So anartha, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, kama, he says, where does he say? Indriyani mano buddhir asyadhisthana uchyate. He says it is in the senses, it is in the mind, and it is also in the intelligence. So let's focus on the mind and intelligence for right now. So for example, now when the anartha, we're talking about impurity, which is anartha. Now anartha in the mind. What it means is that, see, there is something of greater value, and there is something of smaller value or lesser value. So now, for example, okay, making money is important. But then, do we want to betray our friends? Do we want to backstab our relatives to make money? No, not required for that. So there is greater value and smaller value. Now this we have understood with our intelligence. What is more valuable, what is less valuable. But when there is impurity in the mind, what happens is, there is greater desire for the thing of smaller value. And there is smaller desire for the thing of greater value. So smaller desire for greater value, greater desire for smaller value. When this happens, this is the essence of impurity at the level of the mind. So for example, somebody who is sliding, when I was in college, I had a room partner who came from not a very well-to-do family. His parents had taken loans, and so that he could come to college and he could study. And he was initially first year and second year, first half, he was very responsible, studying very well. But somehow something happened, and in one of the exams he didn't do very well. He actually failed in that exam, and he had been a brilliant student throughout his life. And when he failed, he just couldn't cope with it. How can I fail? And he hid it from his parents because he didn't want them to feel distressed. But then he started feeling guilty. Oh, I'm hiding it from my parents. And then somehow, to cope with that, he started drinking. And then slowly, like a downward trajectory started happening. So what happened was, intellectually he knew that actually drinking is a bad thing. So he knew studies is far more important. Drinking is, some people think drinking is a form of enjoyment. There are movies they show, you take 2 drinks and say cheers. So it's considered a form of enjoyment or celebration. But before you say cheers, you have to have something to be cheerful about. If we are saying cheers while our life is getting ruined completely, what is the point of that? There are many other ways to celebrate apart from drinking when we do well. But what was happening was that slowly, although he intellectually understood studies is far more important, but the desire for drinking was becoming stronger and stronger and stronger. And it was just overwhelming him. So matter, in the sense of, say, getting some material enjoyment, that matters. Matter in the sense of getting wealth matters. But there are things that matter more than matter. So there's a hierarchy of arthas. So anartha means a lower value but a greater desire. Now when the anartha goes to the level of buddhi, that is far more damaging. So this same hierarchy is there. Smaller value, greater desire, greater value, smaller desire. But it becomes worse. It's what happens is, so the reality and our perception or our assessment. So when it goes to our assessment, even with our buddhi, so what happens is that which is of greater value, when anartha goes into our mind, we think that which is a greater value, we think of it of a lesser value, a smaller value. So it is not just the desire is distorted, but what happens? Our value system itself is distorted. And that which is of smaller value, we think that is of a greater value. So when the mind is filled with impurity, that is a problem. But when the impurity goes to the level of intelligence, it becomes much more difficult. Because there it's not just that our desires are distorted, our value system itself has become distorted. And then we have to correct the value system. Then we have to correct the desires. It's much more problematic. So let's try to understand what do you mean by this value system being distorted. So at this point, we use our buddhi to rationalize. Many of you have heard this word rationalize? when we rationalize, what do is, we tell rational lies. When we rationalize, we tell rational lies. So, for example, if a husband has told his wife, I'm going to stop smoking, and the wife comes to the husband's room and there's smoke all over. He says, why are you smoking? He says, no, I was not smoking. Actually, the room was very cold. I wanted to make it warm for you. Now, that's a patent lie. We know it's a lie, but we tell it. So, I think many of you know the story of alcoholism. There was an anti-alcohol campaigner who wanted to demonstrate how dangerous alcohol is. So he brought a demonstration. He had a small beaker in which alcohol was there, and he had a small box in which a small insect was there. So he opened the box, turned it upside down and threw the insect inside the beaker. And then the insect fluttered a little bit and soon it died, sank and died. And then he showed that beaker to everyone, the insect motionless dead. What do you learn from this? It's a gathering of alcoholics, everybody is looking down. And one alcoholic was looking very cheerful. So he said, what happened? What do you learn from it? He raised his hand. He said, yes, when we drink alcohol, all the germs and worms in our abdomen will die. So, here, we use our intelligence to justify whatever we want to do. And that becomes a problem. So when this happens, it becomes much more difficult to actually deal with it. See, smoking, if you look at the history of research, initially, if you even look at 1960s or 1970s, most of the movies in the West, now some movies in India still happen, but in the West, the typical hero would be smoking. And smoking would be a sign of being cool. And then, after that, slowly the evidence started mounting in the medical field that actually smoking causes cancer. And then the tobacco companies didn't want to acknowledge this. So when this came out, they actually sponsored research in several big universities, and they got several scholars, several researchers to publish papers that actually there is some unknown gene, and that gene stimulates people to smoke, and that gene also causes cancer. So, smoking does not cause cancer. It is some people have that gene. And if you don't have that gene, you can smoke but it won't cause cancer in you. So, this was, they tried to aggressively portray it, was hoisted for some time, but eventually it just became undeniable. But this is an example of what is happening. You are trying to justify something. So when the buddhi, so initially men were smoking, and then for women smoking was considered a bit taboo. So then they thought that now all the young men who can smoke, they started smoking. This was before this research came up. They thought, how do we get women to smoke? So the advertising companies came up with the idea. They had some famous actors who smoke. And then they made a special kind of cigarette which had different pink color and everything which women identify with. And then at that time the feminist movement, the suffragette movement and the feminist movement were growing up. Women wanted freedom. And this woman, in the Hollywood movie, this ad shows her smoking, says, I am lighting my torch of freedom. That particular spinning, you have the word spin doctor. So in that particular spin that they gave, people think, oh yeah, women started thinking, society has told us don't smoke. When we smoke, we are lighting our torch of freedom. Well, it was a torch that was lighting and destroying their intelligence, not giving them freedom. But so either because of our own misunderstandings or because of others' influence. When the anartha goes to the level of the buddhi, it is far more difficult to deal with. So if we consider the pair of Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana, Now both of them are anarthas. But for Dhritarashtra, the anartha, both of them had anartha, but for him, the anartha was primarily at the level of the mind. He knew that what Duryodhana was doing was wrong, but I can never say no to Duryodhana. It was like that. He was very attached to his son. Now so even when Krishna came as the peace messenger, Krishna presented his peace proposal. So Dhritarashtra said, "O Keshava, I accept everything that you say. It is just that my son doesn't listen to me, so please try to persuade him, and then the war can be avoided." Now he is sitting on the king's throne. He is saying, I can't take the decision. So here, for him, now he is the king. And for him, yes, for any person, taking care of their family is important, or wanting to please your family members is important. But you have a bigger responsibility. And that is to the kingdom. And in this case, it was what he was going to do was he was going to harm even his own son. His son could be killed. So there is attachment. He had attachment. Now, attachment is different from affection. Affection is natural and desirable. Now, when we have attachment and when we have affection, if anybody asks us for something, we don't like to say no. Especially if we like that person, we don't like to say no to that person. So, going back to the earlier example, that if we have a friend, and a friend likes to drink, come, let's go for a party where they'll be drinking. Now, if a friend is inviting us for something, we don't like to say no. Yes, but in that case, it's good to say no. No, I'm not coming for the party, but you also don't. We can do something, we can have fun in some other way. Affection is where we don't like to say no. Attachment is where we can't say no. Sometimes in romantic movies, it is shown as if it's a sign of love. I can never say no to you. Whatever you ask me, I do. That's not a sign of love. Love means sometimes you should be ready to say no to the other person. So now for Dhritarashtra, the attachment, the anartha was at the level of the mind. He knew what is right, but I just can't say no to Duryodhana. For Duryodhana, the anartha was at the level of the mind and at the level of the intelligence. See, Duryodhana never acknowledged also that I did something wrong. No. When the whole disrobing happened, that whole ghastly incident happened, before that, he tried to burn the Pandavas alive. Before that, he tried to poison Bhima. After doing all these things, do you think Duryodhana had any regrets? Yes, he had. He regretted that his plan was not successful. He didn't regret that I had done anything wrong, but he regretted that my plan was not successful. And in fact, when Krishna pointed out to him how disastrous his choice of fighting or not giving the Pandavas their rightful claim, or at least giving them 5 villages, how disastrous that could be. And we should not make such a choice. He tried to rationalize. And he said that I am simply acting according to my nature. And it is the Creator who has given me this nature. So, if you want to criticize my actions, don't criticize me for my actions, criticize the Creator. And he's saying this to Krishna. Basically saying, you should criticize yourself, Krishna, for having made me like this. No. That is, we always have the capacity to make choices. So for Duryodhana, he was incorrigible because the anartha had gone not just at the level of the mind, but at the level of the intelligence also. And it's possible to change, but it's very difficult at that time. Now for Dhritarashtra, because the anartha was at the level of the mind, after Duryodhana was killed, then when Vidura came back, then Vidura's words had an impact. And he became detached and he tried to progress on the path to enlightenment. So for us, anartha means we all can look at in our life where there is a misalignment or misdirection of our desires, and has it gone to the level of values? So if we explore this, if we analyze this, then we can move forward. So for example, if you consider lust. So now at a particular age, puberty hits and the hormones start getting activated and desires start growing wild. So the desires are biological. But then what happens is, those desires with the buddhi need to be kept within the boundaries of dharma. But sometimes the desire just overpower the intelligence and a person may do something improper. But then sometimes that lust goes not just at the level of mind, it also goes to the level of intelligence. That is where, for example, people start justifying things like intimate relationships. And somebody might say that, actually the standard example even is, you don't even buy a car without going for a trial run. So, you want to have a lifelong relationship, you have a trial run before that. Now the problem with that is, forget spirituality, forget morality, simple sociology. If you look at the sociological facts, in the West, now living relationships are very common, or premarital sex in general is very common. But couples who have had living relationships and then they get married, or couples who have got married without having living relationships, the divorce rates among couples who have had living relationships, that is actually more. Now, you can attribute many reasons for this, but one main reason is that what happens is that people, there is desires can grow wild at any time. Somebody will say, okay, we find we are compatible and then we can be together. Okay, that makes sense. But relationships, their compatibility is important, but commitment is even more important. So what happens is, once somebody has violated that boundary because the desire is strong, then after they get married also, again they might get attracted to someone else. And again they have a desire. And then, okay, once I violated the boundary, what's wrong violating it again? And then so just from a sociological perspective, the statistics are not in favor of living relationships. And beyond that, the more important thing is a human being like a car? Aren't you objectifying human beings? No, relationship, people are not just objects that you are not going to buy an object. You are actually committing to a dharmic union. In all traditions across the world, the marital bond has had some kind of sanctification to it. So it's a sacred bond. It's not just like a purchasing of an object. So we could go into this further, what's wrong with living relationships. But that's not our topic right now. But our point is that this is the example where a person is letting their desires go wild and is justifying letting their desires go wild. Then it is very difficult to get such a person to become free from that ananta. So this is the example of impurity. Now let's go to the last part, that is purification, or what is it? Sorry, transformation. What is the acronym we are discussing? Chit. So we discuss concept, we discuss impurity, and let's discuss transformation now. So how does transformation happen? Broadly speaking, among desires, as I said, are associated with the mind and values. By values, I am talking about here the valuation that we do, which is associated with our intelligence. So which is easier to convince, the mind or the intelligence? The mind is easier? Yeah, it's like somebody has got a heart attack and the doctor tells them, if you don't want this to be like next heart attack life threatening, give up red meat. They may say, I can't live without meat. Now one devotee showed me an ad, and I was in America a few months ago. One devotee showed me how American culture has changed. In America now vegan is become quite cool. But there was He showed me some video clip from some TV show. It was just about 8-10 years ago. So one American is asking another American. He said, "Are you a vegetarian?" "No, I am an American." So what it means, if I am an American, obviously I'll eat meat. So they thought that not eating meat is un-American. But so that is, now somebody may have a lot of desires to eat meat. But if at least with the intelligence they understand that meat, especially red meat, is very harmful for the heart. And therefore I like red meat, but I like life more. I like to live more. So at least at the level of intelligence they are convinced. That doesn't mean next time they say red meat they won't have the desire. But at least the intelligence is convinced. Then they will have to deal with the desires. So for us, our intelligence is convinced through Shastra. The more we study scripture, the more we hear classes, gradually our intelligence becomes strengthened. Now, when our intelligence becomes strengthened, then even when some desires pop up, at that time we have the intellectual strength to at least fight against those desires. Now we may not win immediately, but at least we are putting up a fight. Otherwise what happens is we just don't put up a fight at all. It is Sarva dharman parityajya mayam ekam sharanam vraja. Give up everything and just surrender to Maya. So once the intelligence is convinced, then if we go back to the starting point, we go to which quadrant over here? The third quadrant, isn't it? At least our values, our intelligence assessment is right. So after this, gradually speaking, if we consider how do we change our desires, that takes much longer time. Now by Shastra I mean we read books of wisdom. So now changing our desires happens broadly in three ways. And explain this, we'll conclude the class and we'll have question answers. So we could say the first input is Shastra itself. But it's one thing to understand that something is good, but it's another thing to actually desire it. So addiction is a state where we know something is not good for us, but still the desire remains. There's one addict, alcoholic, he depicted his plight in a very, very poignant way. He talked about his alcoholism. "You treat me badly, I trust you madly." That next time alcohol desire comes up, oh, I'm going to drink it. So this buddhi is important, but it's not enough. The one thing is we need sangha. We need association. We need association of people who have healthy desires. So here what I'm talking about, transformation means our values become healthy and our desires become healthy. So say if you make friends with a person who's alcoholic, then naturally we become more vulnerable to drink alcohol. But if you make friends with people who are spiritually minded, with those who are interested in pursuing spirituality, maybe go to some holy places, go for some camps, do some spiritual activities, then what happens is those desires start growing. Sangat sanjayate kamaha. So association plays a very important role in changing our desires. Now after association, well, that is important, but that alone is not enough. Along with association, there is swabhava. Swabhava means that we have to find out what are our natural healthy desires. What are my natural interests? Somebody may like drawing, somebody may like math, somebody may like language, somebody may like somebody like photography, somebody may like programming, different people like different things. These, we may call this material, but the point is, these are desires which enable us to do something productive in life. So, we find something which we can do of value. So, desires cannot be removed, they cannot be repressed, but they can be redirected. So, in good association, some desires are cultivated, but then what are my natural healthy desires? That's important. In the case of Duryodhana, what happened? He actually had dangerous desires, but he took the Sangha, not of Bhishma and Vidura, but the Sangha of Shakuni and Karna. Especially Shakuni, that dragged him down. So we choose our association, but then according to our Swabhava. So what does Swabhava mean? We look for basically, what is it? What are the things? You can say two circles. What are the things that feel good for me? Feel good not in the sentimental sense, but I feel content while doing those things. I was in Canada and a couple had come to meet me and they had a small 4-year-old child. So they wanted to talk something serious and they had brought the child also. I said, won't you have to pay attention to your child? Will you talk? So they said, no. They said, the child loves drawing. And they had given the child a magic slate and the child was just drawing various things. And then after finishing the drawing, he would just show it to his mother. His mother just smiled at him. And then he would erase it and start drawing something else. And we had a 1-hour discussion and his 4-year child was completely absorbed. So I said, you have got an artist in your family now. So now sometimes some people may have some talents which are like so natural, where they just become, so what is it? We can say it's ultimately Krishna, that is true. But which connection with Krishna? For some people it can be music, some people it might just be reading. So what is it that we feel content doing? That, even I just feel so at peace while doing this. And the other is, what is we are good at doing that thing. That means we are competent at it. So try to find our Swabhava. And then by this Swabhava, the more we find it, what will happen? We will start feeling that I am doing something meaningful in my life. And the more we do something meaningful, the more we will be able to actually give up the anartha, the meaningless. So among the various countries in the world, Scandinavian countries have been the most successful countering drug addiction. And one of the things that they did was, drug addicts, especially those who are drug peddlers, what happens, many drug addicts become drug peddlers because they take drugs and they need money for buying further drugs. So the drug peddlers are those who sell drugs. Drug peddlers sell that you don't have money, you sell these drugs. And if you sell these drugs, then we'll give you money. So drug addicts become drug peddlers. So what they did was, they, instead of arresting these those who are into drugs and putting them in jail, they put them in rehabilitation centers where they give them personality tests and various explorations to see what their natural interests or natural talents are. And then they try to fund education for them in those particular skills. And then when they come out of that rehabilitation center, often nobody will want to employ, the word is junkie. He was taking drugs, nobody wants to employ a drug junkie. But then the government said, if anybody employs these people, then we will pay half the salary for them. So the idea is the government wants them to get constructively employed. And when this happened, then they were able to actually get the drug addiction down considerably. So what is here? This is, if a person can do something of artha, something of value, then that helps them a lot. The last is seva. It is seva to Krishna and Krishna's devotees. So seva is the way we practically connect with Krishna. So when we start rendering some service, by that what happens? Krishna becomes pleased and Krishna starts purifying us. That, so, Syan Mahat Sevaya Vipra Punya Tirtha Nishevana. The Bhagavatam says that if you serve the great souls, if you serve Krishna, and the great souls won't want service for themselves. The great souls want us to serve Krishna ultimately. So when we do that, we will become purified. So in this way, each one of us, from wherever we are, we can become transformed. We can understand what is really of value, and we can have our desires aligned with those values. And that way, we can make our life the most meaningful that is possible. So I'll summarize what we discussed today. Broadly, topics are matters that matter more than matter. Put first things first. So we discussed this in 3 broad parts. What was the acronym? CHIT. So C, I and T. C was? So the concept was basically what happens inside us. So we are sometimes wise and sometimes otherwise. So why does this happen? Because there are pulls inside us. We discussed this diagram of we have desires and we have values. So we discussed the 4 quadrants, that the quadrant 2 is the worst, quadrant 4 is the best. So we want all to come to quadrant 4 from wherever we are. Now having strong desire, okay, I got it the other way around over here. This is a common stage. Majority people are in this. Majority people are here. Where desires are unhealthy, values may be healthy, and this is rare, relatively speaking. The desires are healthy, values are unhealthy. But basically, wherever we are, oh wow, really messed up over here. This is the worst. So from here we want to get here. From here also we want to get here, but at least we want to get here and then get there. So for us, the inner tension comes because desires and values pull us in opposite directions. The desires are associated with, so the values are associated with the intelligence, and the desires are associated with the mind. And when these pull us in opposite direction, that's the tension which we want to remove in our life. But then I discussed the concept of impurity or anartha. So the idea is we have many arthas in our life, many things of value in our life, but then there is the paramartha, that which is of supreme value. So the paramartha is, the problem is when an artha becomes a paramartha, then that leads to anartha. So we discuss how this is how lust, greed, arrogance, all these develop. When a thing of value becomes the supreme value. And then we discuss the anartha can be at the level of the mind, and this is where our desires become distorted. That means that that which is of lesser value, we have a greater desire for it, and that is greater value, lesser desire. But anarthas can go to mind and intelligence. So when this happens, then it is desires and values both get distorted, and this is much more troublesome. So who are the example we discussed of this? Desires distorted is Dhritarashtra, and both distorted is Duryodhan. This is much more difficult to change. And then we lastly talk about the transformation. So in the transformation, I talked about 3 points broadly speaking. First is that I talked about how when you want to get transformed, first we start with values. That is easier to change because the buddhi can be persuaded with logic. So this is, we discuss how to change the intelligence, that is through Shastra, through books of wisdom. And then we discuss how the mind can be changed, that is 3 things broadly. What are the 3 things? First was Sangha. We try to cultivate good association, because And with those we associate with, their desires start coming to us. The second is Swabhava. We try to find out, we say, not necessarily we have to find out, I have some mysterious nature that I find out. Just find out what are the things that we are content doing and we are competent doing. And the more we find this list, the more, and the last is we do Seva. By Seva, what happens is we connect with all pure Krishna, and that all pure Krishna, he purifies us. So in this way, each one of us can align our desires and values with the things that matter the most, and thus we can make our life the most meaningful that is possible. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Questions or comments? Oh, okay. Yes, please. You have a mic? We have a mic here, no?
Hey.
Pass on.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for this wonderful lecture. Prabhuji, my question is that you said to transform mind and intelligence, we need to have healthy desires and values. To get that, we need to get associated with devotees and study scriptures. So how do we get this benefit of association with devotees? How do we maintain meaningful relationships with devotees? And how do we study scriptures? What is the method of reading and studying scriptures? Thank you.
So associating with devotees broadly means that there should be a transfer of desires. We say this devotee wants to distribute books, devotee wants to organize a festival, devotee wants to have prasadam for a program, whatever. So we have those desires. Devotees want to teach us how to teach the Bhagavad Gita. So those are desires. So basically, when we associate devotees, like Prabhupada's books, we really had so many desires to share Krishna Bhakti. And then by reading his books, we also get some desires. So generally, we associate in a way that we are open to their desires and see which desires resonates with us. And by studying scripture, there is no one way to study. But generally, the point of studying scripture is not just to remember a lot of shlokas or remember a lot of facts. All that is good. But the key point is that what in scripture speaks to me. Now this point is so good. This point is actually not this point. Oh, I can speak this point and impress others. No. This point addresses my needs. This point is addressing the situation in my heart. So try to look for such points while you are reading. Be open to whatever you are reading, but make it active reading. Hey, this point sounds interesting. If it sounds interesting, just pause a little bit. Oh, why does it interest me so much? It's because it's connected with this incident in my life. It's connected with this thing in my life. So try active reading. One simple way to do active reading is to just ask questions. So if you're reading and you're feeling bored, don't just say, I'm bored, let me stop reading. No. Okay, I'm feeling bored. Just ask, why am I feeling bored? Okay, it's because maybe I'm not finding anything that is really relevant to me. Okay. Then just look at what you are reading and see. Is this really not relevant to me? How could it be related with my life? How could it be related to what I'm going through? So if you just start asking questions, then that will make your scriptural reading much more interesting and engrossing. Next question.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you so much for this wonderful class. Your lectures are always overwhelming. It is very intellectual, brainstorming, and empowers us to study Shastras more deeply. The question I have is from the third quadrant that we have discussed, where the majority lies. There is the healthy values and the unhealthy desires. I find a gap here. There are for myself actually, there are healthy desires and then there are unhealthy desires. And there is a very, strong fight going on between the healthy desire and unhealthy desire. The values are good by reading scriptures, and as we discussed that Sangha, so we get empowerment to the intelligence that this is right and this is wrong. Still, there is very much strong fight going on between healthy desires and unhealthy desires.
So yes,
How to understand this?
I got this. See, in general, when I said our desires are healthy or unhealthy, what I meant is not that all our desires are unhealthy or all our desires are healthy. Broadly, the power of our desires tilts in an unhealthy direction. That means the unhealthy desires are stronger than the healthy desires. So there's a fight and often unhealthy win. So it's not that all the desires of a person are unhealthy. So now in such a situation, what do? Basically, we try to, if my desires, that those which are healthy and those which are unhealthy. So essentially, the way is we feed the healthy desires and we starve the unhealthy desires. So feed the healthy desires means that put more thought into it, visualize it. Say if I have a desire to understand the Bhagavad Gita or study the Bhagavad Gita, read the Bhagavad Gita, then try to visualize. If I read 15 minutes every day, that means I can read maybe 3 pages. It's Bhagavad Gita 600 pages. Okay. And that means I can read it completely 300 days. That means in less than 1 year. If I read for 1 hour every day, I will complete it much faster. I can complete it 75 days, less than 3 months. Just think of how you can contemplate, visualize, and feel the desire. On the other hand, unhealthy desires are there. Desires, they are fed by external perception and internal imagination. So, if somebody is alcoholic, how does the desire grow? They see some bottle, they see somebody drinking. Or they are idle, and when they are idle and they are unengaged, they are just fooling around, lazy, that time they start imagining. So basically, when we feed, it is by external perception. Say if you meet a friend who has read the whole Bhagavad Gita and this person can quote the Gita, oh wow, this person learned so much, I also want to learn. That's perception and imagination. So perception is external, imagination is internal. So if we avoid external perception, we avoid internal imagination, then that's how we starve the desires. We starve the desires, they will become weaker. Initially they will scream. Any animal, if there's a lion and a tiger, you try to starve it, it will scream. And like that, when we starve our desires, they will actually start becoming more noisy. That time we can panic. I can't bear this. But the fact is, when you are starving the desires, they are becoming noisier, they are becoming scarier, but actually they are becoming weaker. It's just a phase. But once they are starved, they just become weaker, they become clean. Okay. Next question.
Hare Krishna. Really, in the transformation part, there were 4 things. To transform the intelligence, you can do it through reading Shastra, scriptures, hearing classes. In the mind transformation part, it was about Sangha, Seva, and so on. So, after coming to ISKCON, I can see that we have a practical way to learn Shastras, and also Seva comes by coming in association with devotees, Sangha. But I do not see any practical way how do we identify our Swabhava. Is there a way how to do that?
I think identifying Swabhava is quite difficult. It's a complex field. It takes time also. So rather than Swabhava, just try to identify some activities which fall in that interest. And as I said, what is it that I feel satisfied doing, and what is it that I am good at doing. And just focus. If you find one activity, start doing that activity. And gradually you will find that activity is good, let's go on. Sometimes you find one other activity. Identifying the Swabhava also takes some time. We need to come to a little bit of Sattva Guna. If we don't come to Sattva Guna, what happens is we ask our mind, which is a Rajasic or Tamasic, what is my Swabhava? What is my natural service? What is my natural profession? The mind will have one ready answer. Whatever you are doing right now, that is not your Swabhava. The mind will keep us dissatisfied. See, what happens is the mind is so restless that even when we do something that is our Swabhava, it is not that the mind will always be happy at that time also. There also the mind will find some reason to crib and complain. Like for me, I love writing. I love speaking. So that I would say that is broadly my Swabhava. But while writing also, there are phases when ideas don't come, when I'm not able to articulate what I want as clearly as I wanted it. Or my writing doesn't receive as much appreciation I think as I should receive, or something doesn't get published. And all that happens. So at that time I can get agitated and think, why should I write also? But this is what gives value to my life. Now if the world gives value to it, it's good, but if it's not, this is what gives value to my life. That's what I'm going to do. So basically, if you're not in Sattva Guna, if something is not valued by others, we stop valuing it. Because Raja Guna and Tamo Guna are like that. And that's why, even if we came to know our Swabhava, we'll think it's not my Swabhava. That's why don't worry too much about Swabhava initially. Focus on the other things, Shastra, Sangha and Seva. And as we come to Sattva, the Swabhava will become easier to understand. And some simple, if you want, you can keep a journal every day. And think of just, okay, what are the moments when I feel, during the day, when did I feel content in my life? Oh, I feel satisfied. Or what were the activities during the day that I look forward to? So say, I look forward to the time when I watch TV. Well, we're not talking about that, we're talking about something more meaningful. Okay, I look forward to, when I'm studying engineering, but I look forward to the time when we go to the workshop and do this particular activity. Okay, see what you look forward to. Keep a journal of that. And then look at what are the activities that you are able to do quite well. Everybody can practice and improve, but some people just have natural talent where they can do things well. So keep a journal every day, observe, and then gradually you will find it more. But don't worry too much about it initially.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you for the wonderful session and like how you went from problem to the solution. Thank you very much. And there are two doubts. First is like there is not possible for every person to get a good association. So are there any alternatives, or like even if a person follows other 2 points, will it be okay? And my second doubt is that when we come to the self-realization part, it is not possible for initially for us to find our actual interest. Like if maybe I'm good in drawing, but I don't know that. So how to identify our natural interest which we are having?
What is the second part? You said I like drawing, but
like if a person doesn't know what is his actual interest because he was too much in studying and etc. Not explored himself.
Okay.
Like
got it. Yeah. So the first part is, it's good association is not a 1-0 thing. See, even if you're in a college or in a company, there also you will see a spectrum. There may not be spiritual association, but there are some people they're really for the career. That is better than people who are there just to. Some employees think the success of their day is how much work they can avoid. Isn't it? Now they want to go by the cooler and just chit chat, and they just want to dodge the work and they want to fool around and just waste their time. No. That association we avoid. People are competent, people are dedicated, we can learn from them. So within whatever association is available, we can try to choose the best association that is there. So it's not that everybody is non-devotee is in Tamoguna. Rajoguna is better than Tamoguna and Sattoguna is better than Rajoguna also. And with respect to, if you don't identify, just try to do some self-observation. Like I said, the same points. Now note what are the things that in a day you look forward to. What are the things that you felt happy doing. And gradually by that it will be removed. Yes.
Prabhuji, thank you so much for a wonderful class. I have a question like, as you said that what we feel good and what we are good at, that is our swabha. So, like, sometimes we understand after a lot of stuff that this is what I like doing and I'm good at doing, and we try to get it by doing try to relate with our profession, getting that into our profession, converting what we do, let's have some sort of profession around it, and because of that, we have some sort of strong mental ambitions which are very difficult to achieve also while pursuing our current profession, and are quite unhealthy for our life also, like very unhealthy for spiritual life, unhealthy desires, and in run of or chasing to achieve that, we lose on our spiritual values also, like if they
See, we cannot avoid some amount of danger in the world. It's everywhere there. So now we want to try to pursue our swabhava. Broadly speaking, it's that generally the pursuit of the swabhava should not bring out the anartha with us. If it is fueling anartha, then we are not going in the direction of our swabhava. So it's like, the way I put it is, there is the higher spiritual taste. That means in chanting, hearing about Krishna, and worshipping Krishna, we get happiness. There is the lower material taste. Now we want to go from the lower material taste to the higher spiritual taste. Now in between, the swabhava is the higher material taste. Now if we use the swabhava for Krishna, then it becomes a material spiritual taste. So if from here we are repeatedly falling here, then that is not healthy. So now, is it possible that sometimes in pursuing our swabhava or something that we think of our swabhava, we are going away from our spiritual life? Well, it depends how you define what going away from spiritual life means. Sometimes we may decide that this is an important phase of my career, I want to pursue this. So in our spiritual life or spiritual standards, we can say there are certain activities which are aspirational. For example, I may want to every day sleep at this time so that I can work a week at this time. Every morning I like to spend this much time on sadhana, and then I go for my work. That's aspirational. But there are some activities which are non-negotiable. So now we cannot always be at the aspirational level. Say for example, if I have an important exam, on that day we may decide, okay, in the morning I have to study. I'll do my sadhana right. Now that's not necessarily a bad thing. If you can do a sadhana and go for things, that's also good. That's good. But sometimes you may have to study. So, but if somebody says, I'll not do any sadhana at all because my exam is there. That is, we are not having any non-negotiable at all. So we say, go away from spiritual life. Spiritual life is not 1-0. It is not digital, it's analog. So, even if we can't be at the aspirational level in everything, in our spiritual life, at least have a non-negotiable level and stay at that level. And have a plan, okay. Maybe I have to do this particular internship, this is 6 months. Or I have to do this particular course, it is 1 year. During this time, I may have to bring my spiritual life to this level. But after this, I'm going to bring it back together. And talk with some senior devotee, some spiritual guide. Tell them their plan, see what they tell about it. And then tell them, please keep me accountable about this. Please be in touch with me after 1 year, or if I don't come back, remind me of this. So basically, that way, we don't have to endanger our spiritual life unnecessarily. But at the same time, thinking that I have to stick to a particular standard of spiritual life should not drop us, should not prevent us. It's like I talk about artha and anartha. See, if I pursue only artha, then that will lead to anartha. But for many people, if they pursue only paramartha and they don't pursue any artha, now for some rare souls, that's wonderful. But for many people, pursuing only paramartha can also lead to anartha. Anartha not in the sense that a lust or anger will increase, but anartha in the sense that anartha can mean internal impurity But anartha can also mean external adversity. If somebody says, I'm studying, but no, I'm going to be I'm a student, but I'll just chant, I won't study. Well, that happens, you get into trouble in future. No, you cannot pursue only Paramartha. Now, Artha we pursue for the sake of Paramartha. I want to study, I want to get a good job, I want to get financial stability, so that I can serve Krishna better in future. But when I am a student, I have studying is my dharma. Let me do that properly. So basically, we need to both. We have Artha and Paramartha, but it is Artha for Paramartha. I pursue money, I pursue some control, I pursue some position, some respect. It is all for the sake of Krishna. Okay?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yeah, I think we should. Okay, yeah.
So, while we were looking at transforming the desires section, we looked at association, that is the transfer of desire. Second thing is swabhav and the seva. So my question is, how much do these intersect? Like, do you associate with devotees who have similar swabhav?
Ideally, if Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Is this the organizer's way to tell me to stop? Okay, let me know when to stop. I am fine with it. So it intersects, that's like a dream scenario. That if we find a seva that's according to a swabhava, and then we have sangha of devotees who are also into that particular seva only. Then somebody likes music, and they take service in music, and they associate with devotees who are deep into music. That's like a dream scenario. But sometimes in the material world, dreams only remain dreams. We may find it, but it will take some time.
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, I have seen that many times our desires are aligned with the desires of the majority. So is there any parameter so that we can put our desires and intimate that our desire is fruitful or it is against us?
Sorry, desires are in the
Means
Hare Krishna.
our desires are very much influenced by the desires of the majority. So how can we intimate that our desire is wrong or right?
Intimate means evaluating. How can we evaluate? Okay. So see, the majority desires, they are not by default necessarily wrong. So everybody wants to protect their health. Everybody wants some financial stability, prosperity. These are not wrong desires. But the problem is, how much are these desires prioritized? Like I said, it is artha. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So like I said, it is artha. So we don't want the artha to become the paramartha. So best is to study Shastra regularly and to have some association, some sangha, in which we can actually turn it off. We can ask some senior devotees that is pursuing this desire healthy or it's unhealthy, and that way we can learn. Sometimes it is phalena parichayate. We pursue some desire for some time, and then by the fruit we understand, okay, this desire is not very healthy for me. But actually it's overall a combination of everything. Okay, thank you. Behind.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. So my simple question is, due to the state of mind, desire and the values, when sometimes it goes in negative way, desires overcome the values, and some walk of the life we make some decisions, some actions that affect not just us but others also. But that imprints a guilt, strong guilt in our mind for the rest of the life, just because that also affects others. So how to overcome that guilt?
Okay, how do you overcome the guilt because some of our actions have hurt others also, not just ourselves? Well, see, if I am here and this is dharma, this is adharma, this is the right action and this is the wrong action. So, guilt should come here. Guilt should stop us. It should act as a barrier so that we don't do wrong action. But sometimes what happens is guilt comes here. That means because I did something wrong, I did something bad. So therefore, we start thinking, I am a bad person and I will always be a bad person. So these are degrees which are increasingly worse. I did something bad, we should be honest enough to, humble enough to acknowledge that. But I am a bad person, that's a strong judgment. And I am a bad person forever, or I'll always be a bad person forever, that's not just a strong judgment, it's a wrong judgment. So this is, even if guilt come over here, this is actually not guilt, but you can call it as pseudo guilt. It is false guilt. So this guilt is good, this guilt is bad. So we should never be discouraged in doing what we can right now. And so that's how, first of all, what is the effect of guilt on me? And if we are feeling guilty for what we did in the past, the three things we can do. First is acknowledge that we did something wrong. Then apologize to that person. And then to the especially the one affected. And third is try to make some amends. 3 A's. So acknowledge, I hurt you at that time. That is acknowledge. Apologize, I'm sorry for it. And as a way to express my sorrow, express my grief, express my regret or whatever, this is what I can do, or what can I do for you? You can ask them. Now, if we are able to do these 3 things, whatever capacity is possible for us, then we should see that as a debt which we have closed. So it's like we have to see sometimes emotions from something like an economic perspective. When I have hurt someone, that means I have incurred a debt. And then I need to repay the debt. So in this way, if we broadly do these 2 things, we repay that emotional debt to the person. And then don't keep beating yourself up for that afterwards. Okay? Thank you. Wow. Okay.
Hare Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Pranam. Thank you so much for enlightening the class.
खत्म करो क्या कुछ बता दूँ 4, 5
Thank you so much for enlightening class. You sometime back mentioned that when impurity goes to the level of intelligence, then it becomes more difficult. And you indeed walked us through the money becomes to greed, then respect leads to ego, attraction, lust, and control to anger. And among youth at this age, we face lust as the prominent issue. So what could be done when lust has gone to the level of intelligence? And the irony is that we have fed it through the external perception as we live in the material world, and the internal imagination because of our conditionings. And I indeed understand the core message is to read the Shastra, Sangha, Seva and everything. And it helps. It definitely helps, but it becomes momentary than the ultimate momentous in our self-discovery. So in the interim, when it has been hijacked, the intelligence, so what could be done to slowly drive it away from the seat of intelligence to the seat of mind, and at later dethrone it away completely?
Okay. All that I can say is, when I find out, I'll tell you the answer. Dealing with lust is a lifelong challenge for everyone. The Bhagavatam says that nobody except Narayan Rishi is free from, except Lord Narayan is free from lust. So it is not a one and done kind of thing. It is an ongoing challenge. Now, 2 things I will broadly say. That nobody can indulge in lust unlimitedly. Everybody has to have some boundaries. So even we can say the materialistic culture is very sensual, very promiscuous or whatever. But there also, there is a boundary which is considered non-violable, and that's consent. If it's forced, then it's a serious crime. There's serious punishment for that. So nobody can indulge in lust unlimited. So some boundaries have to be there. So for us, again, when instead of thinking of dealing at the lust as 1-0 kind of thing, to see what boundary is non-negotiable for me. And this is something I will never do, no matter what happens, no matter how much I get triggered. Now this and then see what could be an aspirational boundary for me. So you may say aspirational boundary is that when I see something, I just turn my eyes away from it. When some imagination comes up, I immediately start thinking of, I'll chant Hare Krishna, I'll read something else. So I don't even want to dwell on that. I don't want to dhyayato. Dhyayato Vishyan Krishna says. That could be aspirational, but that may not always be possible. But try to have our set of boundaries. And then gradually we move inward from there. And we move towards that. So don't have it like a 1-0. Just because we slipped from one level of self-control, that doesn't mean we are doomed. Try to have that like a spectrum. And the second thing is that don't focus on fighting against lust. Focus on fighting for something else. For fighting for your Krishna Bhakti, fighting for Seva, you need to have something to fill your mind with. If we don't have something to fill our mind with, then lusty thoughts will naturally fill our mind. And telling, no, I don't want to think about it, I don't want to think about it, that's not going to work. So in the battle, it's definitely a battle against lust, but it's more than a battle, it's a war. A battle is a one-time thing. In the war, we fight against and we fight for. So what we fight for is much more important. And that's why cultivating healthy desires. So for example, what is it that I can do meaningful in my life? What is it that I can fill my mind and my life with? Make a plan. Okay, I want to learn this. I like singing. I like kirtan. So I want to learn these 3 tunes in the next 1 week or next 1 month. And whenever you have time, just turn on that kirtan. Or I want to memorize these shlokas. Then keep the shlokas maybe on your phone also, on a notepad or something, keep it. It's an easy pop-up over there. Whenever you have some time, look at it. So rather than focusing on trying to fight against lust, see, we focus on fighting for something higher. Param drishtva nivartate. See, the best way to deal with temptation is to not deal with temptation. To be so busy dealing with something else that we don't have to deal with temptation. We can't avoid temptation, but when we are busy focusing on something else, then what happens is it's a little easier. So if somebody is a doctor and they have a female patient who comes. The doctor may be young, the female patient very attractive. And the doctor can get lusty desires for that. But say if that patient is sick, that patient is injured, that patient has got an accident, you focus on the purpose, how to treat this person. So you focus on that purpose. Now it's not easy, but the more the doctor is serious about the purpose of treating a patient, then that particular desire might come, but it won't be that strong. So now for us, I give a particularly provocative example where a higher purpose can actually override the pleasure motive. For most of us, that kind of context will not be there. But in general, when we fight for, that is our purpose. And what fight against is some pleasure. It's more like a lower pleasure. So we can't fight against a lower pleasure unless we have some higher purpose in our life. We focus on the higher purpose and then the lower pleasure will be easier to deal. Okay, thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Thank you for the wonderful class. My question is.
Yeah, go ahead.
My question is, as you explained about values and desires. So sometimes we are knowingly or unknowingly we follow some desires due to bad association, or there are several circumstances, or due to some relationships we wanted to keep those relationships we follow their others' desires as well, and we side our that values. So how to cope up with that?
Well, again,
sorry to interrupt. This is the last question. It's fine.
sure.
How to focus on our values?
So sometimes it's not easy. It's like, say, if we consider the graph of our urges with time. So what happens? We have urges and the urges have surges. Just go up. And sometimes when these surges come, at this time we may just feel overpowered. We just feel helpless. And if we fixate too much on those times, when those cravings become very wild, I just can't deal with them. So sometimes we may feel, I just can't resist these. I know this is not good, but I can't resist it. So then don't focus on those times. Focus on these phases. And even if we can't resist our urges, we can persist between our urges. That means, okay, when that urge came up, I did something which I'm not supposed to do. But that doesn't mean it's the end of the story. Okay, but the urges don't stay very strong, very unbearably strong all the time. They subside after some time. So at that time, start doing something constructive. Chant the holy names, read shastras, find what is a healthy interest for you. Find out some purpose that you can work for. And the more we start focusing on this, we can persist for our urges. We persist between our urges. What will happen is, with time, let me draw it here only. With time, what will happen is, those urges will become less frequent and less violent. And gradually, the intermediate period between them will itself decrease and their volume will also decrease. And that way we will be able to deal with them. So it's an ongoing battle. Don't let one loss consider that you are defeated. So another thing which we could do in these periods, try to create some boundaries. That means that whatever those desires are there, don't keep the desirable objects readily accessible to you. So somebody is an alcoholic and they are trying to recover from alcoholism. And their home is right next to a bar. And then there will be no bar for them to go to the bar. If they are serious about recovering from alcoholism, then they have to relocate somewhere else. We have to create some distance, some barriers. So in this case, when you relocate, you create a barrier of time, barrier of space. So it's not so easily accessible. If you have the tendency to just spend a lot of time doing unproductive or destructive surfing on the net, then put some filter on your filtering app on the phone. So now anybody can subvert the filter app and go to somebody else's phone or whatever. We can do all those things. But what happens is, if we can have just some protection, some boundary, that when the surge comes, that boundary is sufficient enough that it doesn't allow us to immediately indulge. And if the surge goes down, then okay, there's no need to do all this. So persist between the urges, and when the surges come, don't focus on resisting the urges. Focus on creating boundaries so that even when the urges come, we don't have the facility to immediately indulge in them. And that's how we'll be able to survive those urges, the surges of the urges also. So, thank you very much. Shrimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanande.